Welcome to the BitGeek podcast. I'm your host, Ron Avis, and sitting with me on the couch to my left is my co-host, the Prince of Pixels,
Nick Wright.
Also returning, the Transformer know-it-all, Mr. GB Blackrock himself,
Mark Baker-Wright.
And I mean that in the best possible way, Mark.
I know.
And this week we're wrapping up our tribute to Toys R Us. So where do we go from here? We kind of talked about the layout of the store about as much as we can. Let's talk about some of the things that are distinctive to Toys R Us that you think about,
Hey, does Mark have that Transformer, that Optimus Prime with the Toys R Us branding? Why don't you talk about
Oh, yeah. You shared that in our chat or whatever.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that?
So this is a Japanese exclusive. And of course, Japan is one of the countries that still has Toys R Us.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, they survived. The Japanese branch was basically doing okay, comparatively speaking, at least. And so they're still around for the time being, at least. But this is a few years old now. They apparently did it to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Toys R Us in Japan and created what they're calling Geoffrey Prime. So basically they took one of the Optimus Prime figures from the recently finished Robots in Disguise line, dressed it up in Geoffrey and Toys R Us related colors. If the box art is any indication, it looks like the shoulders are intended to be boxes, like with ribbon wrapped around them. It isn't real obvious in the toy itself, but the art makes it
okay.
Anyway, this is something that I picked up actually on the last day that Toys R Us was open, before they closed down the U.S. I found an online site, Megalopolis Toys. I had never heard of them before, but they'd apparently gotten a number of these Japanese exclusives, and I decided, okay, this is something I want to get to kind of remember Toys R Us by. Yeah. I still haven't taken it out of the package. I might. I don't tend to keep toys in packages.
I don't either, but sometimes I want to keep
But this is something that I got more for the Toys R Us memory than because of the toy. So I haven't made up my mind to take it out yet. It's still in there.
Speaking of Transformers, I don't want to embarrass you or anything, Mark, but didn't you just recently have invited to do something for San Diego Comic-Con just a couple of weeks ago?
Okay.
Can you talk about that?
Not related to Toys R Us at all.
It's not Toys R Us related, but I mean, I feel like we got to plug this.
But it's current news.
It's current news, yeah.
Transformer sites that I spend a lot of time on, it's called the Allspark. And they typically have people that they send out from their site to go cover all the important toy-related events. They had an invitation to go to an invite-only Hasbro preview breakfast the Thursday morning when San Diego Comic-Con was starting.
Yeah.
They didn't have anybody in the area that could go. They knew I lived in the area, so they sent me an invitation. I actually turned them down at first because I didn't think I could get the time off. I hadn't made any plans to go to San Diego Comic-Con itself. But as time got closer to that day, they still hadn't found anybody else that could go. I decided I can get down there and back inside of an afternoon, a morning.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much going on at work, so I asked for the time off, and the next day was driving from my house to San Diego. Got there in time to attend the preview breakfast, took lots and lots of pictures. You've already seen them online.
Yeah, I saw the gallery. Is it okay if I link that? Is it linkable or?
Sorry?
Can I link that? Is that okay, or is that like an issue with the Allspark website or anything?
The Allspark link is still there, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
If it isn't, I still have the pictures. We can figure out a way to make that work.
Okay.
But basically, I got to see a lot of the upcoming War for Cybertron Siege toys that aren't out in stores yet. They won't be for many months yet. I actually got to interview John Warden, who's the brand manager for the design team for
Look at
Transformers
Mark.
specifically.
I got to interview. Yeah, that's great, man.
So I asked him a few questions. I did a write-up for the AllSpark. And
Yeah, it was
again,
really
there are
good.
links to that.
I enjoyed it.
So it was just an amazing privilege. I got asked to do this thing that very, very few people get to do. And
Yep.
it's really just because I happen to live close enough to make it work.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Sometimes the things just break your way.
The right place at the right time.
Yeah, and for those of you people
Very
who
much.
don't know, Mark has an excellent blog where he writes a lot about Transformers. Not all Transformers all the time, but you know, it for sure has a Transformers lean to it. And that's can you plug that URL, Mark?
That's Blackrock's Toybox is the title, and it can be found at Blackrock's Toybox, no apostrophe,
Yeah.
.blogspot.com.
Or if you just Google Blackrock's Toybox, you'll find it right away.
Yeah, nobody else uses that name.
Yeah, it's really cool, and you update it pretty frequently. And one thing that you've been doing here kind of recently that I've really enjoyed is you're doing like a lot of throwback Thursdays, I guess.
Especially on the Facebook site, which is also under the Blackrock's Toybox name.
Yeah.
So if you're on Facebook, just look up Blackrock's Toybox. And yeah, every Thursday there will be a post from something I wrote 10 years ago.
Right.
That's
So you've been at it for quite a while. But yeah, I've always enjoyed it.
Transformers related.
Now, for this breakfast, how long did you know about this before you said something to me?
I first heard about it about a week before.
Oh,
I did
okay.
I did not commit to going until less than 24 hours before.
You were going to put the screws to him and make sure he went, weren't you?
I know that. Well, it's just that in my mind, because he told me the day before, hey, by the way, I got invited to this thing, but I told him I couldn't go. Yeah, and it was like that, really.
Yeah.
And it was like, but I told him I couldn't go. And then it was like an hour later, he's like, I'm going to go.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I was already wrestling with it by that point.
I'm so glad you decided to do it.
I told about it that's really suggested I should. And it was, I knew even then, kind of amazing that I'd even be asked. And I kind of just realized this is an opportunity I should not be turning my nose up at.
No, because it could lead to future opportunities for you. I mean,
I can't say that it will necessarily, but if it does, hey, great.
You did a good job, and if they can depend on you to go out and because the area that you live in is happening. There's all kinds of things going on out there, so it would.
Unfortunately, not some of the things that it used to be, but yeah.
Yeah. So I was very proud of you. I thought that was so cool.
In my mind, it was like this guy found out he couldn't go like the day before.
That's kind of the way that you told me. Yeah.
I didn't really know any better. So okay,
Mark
it's not
was
a huge
their
deal.
first choice.
I think they have people on their staff, on the website staff, that if they had been able to go would have been the automatics, but none of them were going.
Right. And the funny thing to me though, so he drove 3 hours to go.
It's about 3 hours from where
3
I live
hours to get to San Diego to get to this breakfast. So he got up at like 4 a.m. to get to this breakfast. And,
pretty much.
And then didn't even stay at Comic-Con. He just went home like straight after that.
Well, Comic-Con, of course, you have to get the tickets.
Well, yeah.
Months in advance.
Yeah. You're not going to get an all-access pass to everything just because of that.
Right. So, yeah, you can't even
town and see folks in Stormtrooper outfits all day. But
yeah.
I'd have trouble finding something to do.
So, most things, that you get that discount when you pre-register for tickets or whatever, but you can usually get in still. Just it's more, you got to pay more, but you can still get in. But Comic-Con, you can't even get in at that point.
Oh, with
it's
over
too late.
10,000 people, they're not hurting.
Yeah. And of course, they always have those neat exclusives at Comic-Con, like different toys. Like I remember they had the Ninja Turtle like arcade game toys or whatever. Wasn't that from Comic-Con?
Yeah, those were cool.
Any of the toy exclusives for San Diego Comic-Con, but when I left the breakfast, they did give me a goodie bag.
Goodie bag? You didn't say anything about goodie bag.
I haven't talked about this too much. I mentioned it online on the AllSpark itself, but they gave me a bag that was full of various products they were trying to sell. So one of the things I got Cutthroat without having to actually find it in the store, so it saved me about $15 or so.
Awesome.
I also got most of this I actually put up on eBay since because I don't need it. But they gave me a Thor figure from the Avengers Infinity War movie. They gave me a Grand Moff Tarkin from the Star Wars Black Series.
Oh, that's so cool,
nice.
man.
I did get a pack of the Transformers trading card games that actually were San Diego Comic-Con exclusives. I've already sold those. I got a...
Are those GameStop exclusive as well? Because I remember saw an ad where you could buy them from
I'm
GameStop.
not aware of GameStop having been a partnership in that particular exclusive,
Okay.
although it's the kind of thing they do.
Yeah.
I did get some... I don't even remember the name of it properly, but it's like a game of cards that have different musical songs or stretches, beats, that you basically can put them on this player that they provide and mix your own music like a DJ. So I sold those cards because that's really not my thing, and I don't have the equipment to run it. But that's another thing they were trying to advertise.
Mark is getting to be big news, man. We're not going to be able to book him before we know it.
I got a Bumblebee headband. They're really trying to promote the Bumblebee movie pretty heavily.
I noticed that.
Man, and here, like, that day when he went, I'm sitting here thinking, like, he's going to, like, text me any minute coming out of that breakfast to, like, report, you know, like, tell me what all happened.
I had terrible Wi-Fi access at that thing.
He was there to do a job.
But he went home first before he said anything to me at all. He made that 3-hour trip home
to get you the pictures.
Yeah, I understand. I used to do photography work for, football and basketball teams, and you're kind of exhausted at the end of the day, and you are there technically to do a job, and it's a fun job, but you got all the pictures. You got to go home and you got to pick out the best pictures that you took, because you'll take a ton of them. They don't all turn out very good, so you got to go out and pick the best ones, and then you got to come up with a little write-up or whatever.
He never did tell me about the goodie bag.
Nick's really sore about this. We broke it on BitGeek podcast.
It's like, man, I thought we were brothers,
You are brothers. Now you know.
Doesn't tell me anything.
He's way closer to his family on Allspark. No, he's just giving you a hard time. That's really cool, though, man. I'm happy for you. I've never gotten a goodie bag of anything. I've gotten free cookies, things like that.
I hadn't expected to.
So anyways, off of that, thanks for sharing your stories. That was really cool.
Oh, certainly.
Back to Toys R Us. So, you had, I forget where even I was going from that. Well, you mentioned the Transformer exclusive thing, and I'd mentioned, I already mentioned the colorful tiles, on the outside of the building. Geoffrey is obviously the mascot, and he had a family, like little kids, and they were kind of, They existed in cartoon form at first, I think, and then they sort of became like the mascots in a suit, like Disney World type. Yeah. So there's of course very Toys R Us.
The
song,
the suit one is the song. The suit one is what I think of the most. I don't really think of like the animated.
Me neither.
Geoffrey.
No. When I see those, they're always these. They're all only exist from somebody's VHS player or whatever.
I think of like the fuzzy like Disney World mascot.
But those cartoons were really impressive, though.
Fireplaces glowing, icicles growing, hearts overflowing with cheer. It's that wonderful season we all find so pleasing, the Toys R Us time of year. The world's biggest toy stores, Toys R Us. The biggest selection, Toys R Us. It's the Toys R Us time of year. Toys R Us.
Oh, they were pretty big deal, I guess. But yeah, there was the song, the jingle, like, I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid.
There's a million toys
at Toys R Us
that I can play with. From bikes to trains to video games. It's the biggest toy store there is.
Gee whiz.
I don't want to grow up, because if I did, I wouldn't be a Toys R Us kid. More games, more toys.
Oh, boy.
I want to be a Toys R Us kid. Yay!
I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got the best for so much less. You really flip your lid. From bikes to trains to video games, it's the biggest toy store there is.
Gee whiz.
I don't want to grow up, 'cause
we had a little bit of a delay there knocking us off.
Lag, it kind of throws us off a little bit.
We're not going to fill Carnegie Hall, I guess, at any time.
Technical issues here, sorry.
No, that's okay. But yeah, that's an adorable theme song. And then, of course, obviously, they had all those versions of the song, the very sad version of I Don't Want to Grow Up when the news came out.
Yeah, saw that.
But I love that theme song. It's one of the strongest jingles or theme songs for any product, I would imagine, of all time.
Yeah.
So those are your distinct Toys R Us things. We do a tribute. We a lot of times like to go through the chronological history of, a thing. So we'll do that too. So Mark, you jump in if my facts don't seem right, because I'm iffy on some of these dates.
If I know them, I'll try.
Yeah. Now, from what I have here, the Toys R Us, not as we know it, but in the beginning was 1948, I guess, is when it was founded in Wayne, New Jersey, by a gentleman named Charles P. Lazarus. He, I guess, like his father owned a hardware store, a furniture store or something like that. And he kind of sold toys out of that furniture store. And that's kind of where it all began. He was a World War II veteran. So, he was one of those baby boomer type generation where you had a lot of kids being born. And I guess that was just something to capitalize on, toys. Makes a lot of sense.
Oh, sure.
1957, though, is when it actually evolved to Toys R Us. I believe that's when the logo is branded and all that stuff.
All right.
1968, it became more distinct with the backwards R. They actually flipped the R to give it a little more character, I guess, stand out a bit. And it's been like that all the way up to the end. 1969 is when Geoffrey became a thing for them. They had their first official mascot and never changed. 1973, he appeared in a TV commercial for the first time, probably one of those cartoon commercials that we talked about. 1982 is when the actual jingle was written and became first aired.
I thought that was our era. I mean, they've kept it pretty much ever since, but I thought that was something that started with us.
Yeah, someone named Linda Kaplan wrote it, and she, they all work for those ad agencies. The people that write these jingles have probably many familiar jingles also to their credit. And,
that would make sense.
Yeah, so, but that's probably, I would dare to say, her most famous work. So, she wrote that. Credit goes to Linda Kaplan for orchestrating our childhood. 1983. Now, this is, I don't necessarily remember this, but it is maybe before our time a bit. But Kids R Us, was when they started expanding a little bit. And they were opening new stores. And Kids R Us first opened in 1983. Have no frame of reference for these stores whatsoever.
Kids R Us, I remember, it was mostly focused on clothes.
Yeah. And maybe they had it, maybe for a small period they had. No, in fact, I know they did. There was a little small section off to the side. They built it in. This is pre-Babies R Us, I guess. And one of the distinct features of that store was there were like mirrors, like funhouse mirrors. And I do kind of remember like a little bit of that.
I don't really remember that.
But it was short-lived. 1994, that is when Charles Lazarus stepped down as CEO for Toys R Us. And that's probably the last of the golden age for them, too, coincidentally. I don't know if he saw the writing on the wall and they were losing money. Now, at this point, no, they were making money still. But he steps down.
I wonder when that was, because 94 was the second summer that I worked at Toys R Us. So that's right at that same time I was working there.
Yeah, who knows? They were at least doing well enough to open up that Babies R Us chain in 96. So
and it did very well for a while.
It did really, really well for them. And in fact, if they weren't so head over heels or, their head buried in debt, they might have tried to save that franchise. Because a lot of people
by the time the axe was falling, Babies R Us was actually not doing as well as Toys R Us proper. But there was certainly a time when Babies R Us started where it was doing much, much better than the regular Toys R Us store.
Okay. 2001 I have is a kind of a big date. That's when they opened their Times Square location. Very iconic, huge, 110 square feet. Anytime you would watch any kind of footage of, like a New York-based talk show, they would show like establishing shots outside.
Yeah.
And it always looked really cool, and I would have loved to have visited that
And of course,
store.
was it seen in big?
Well, that's a FAO Schwarz.
Schwarz.
Yeah.
Well, I collapsed them because eventually FAO Schwarz was bought by Toys R Us.
You're right, they did. But yeah, it had a I want to say it had a Ferris wheel inside of it. Just a huge store. Let's see. Moving on. Now I have my dates kind of backwards a little bit here. Now 1998. This is an important date because this is the first year that Toys R Us loses its grip as the dominating toy store. Walmart surpassed them.
Sure.
So that was that's just more of a milestone, really. Walmart put a lot of people out of business, but Toys R Us, they were this just gigantic box store. Now, what's the term that they use for the stores that are? I guess I can't remember it now. Never mind, doesn't matter. 1999, though, this is really important too. This is when they were supposed to enter in an agreement with Amazon, a 10-year agreement.
They did, in fact.
Right, they did. They entered an agreement, and Mark, you could probably speak to this better. Things went south because Toys R Us felt slighted that Amazon started selling toys from other carriers or whatever.
That's pretty much it. I mean, they had an exclusivity arrangement with Amazon in order to get a web presence out there, knowing that times are changing and you need to have a website to really grow your business.
Yeah.
And so they'd arranged with Amazon to be the exclusive sellers of Toys R Us toys. And that was supposed to work the other way around, too, that toys that were sold by Amazon should be through Toys R Us. But they started selling toys that were exclusive to other stores, Target, Walmart. I honestly don't know specifics.
So they were doing some of that. I was thinking it might have been more along the lines of they just weren't able to keep up with supply.
There were a lot of problems, actually, in terms of supply. That's not really the thing that killed the arrangement.
Okay.
Basically, long story short, Toys R Us broke away, sued Amazon. I think they may have actually even won. I don't remember for a fact.
Yeah, $51 million in damages they were able to get in 2009. That was 10 years after the initial agreement. So
suffice it to say that that agreement was supposed to have lasted for several more years, but Toys R Us felt that Amazon didn't keep up their end of the bargain.
Right.
So they were
right.
of it. They eventually put their own site together, but they were never able to put enough time and resources into that site to really make it what it needed to be.
It was never the best. It was okay, but that was never my go-to website to buy the toys that I was looking for. Just didn't like the way they organized the site.
Turned themselves around, and they did quite well with toys specifically.
Yeah. So at this point, if you're looking at the Price is Right guy, it's gonna now you're kind of at that peak where you're just about to drop off. 2003, they start closing stores. The Kids R Us store that I mentioned before, they closed the last of those in 2003. And then in 2005 is the infamous, investors, the Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts.
KKR.
Yeah, KKR. Yeah, so they basically completed a deal worth $6.6 billion to, I guess, gain control of all of Toys R Us's assets, and then, what is it called? Yeah, the leveraged buyout.
They were several groups that were this. It wasn't just them.
Sure.
But basically, you had these. I think it was 3 different entities that were together as part of that leveraged buyout. They bought the company, but they only actually put a fraction of what the purchase price was into it. Everything else was borrowed money. So since they borrowed billions of dollars to make this purchase, they put all of that back into the company as additional debt. So Toys R Us, which was already struggling with about $1 billion in debt, now had $6 billion in debt overnight.
Yeah. And that's not illegal, and it's a practice that was going on quite a bit. And unfortunately, maybe for Toys R Us, that was just they miscalculated. They didn't their plan for the future was just not a good one, I guess.
Well, suffice it to say, it wasn't a matter of Toys R Us planning for the future or not. They were hurting. They needed to be bought out.
Yeah.
And the people who were buying them out didn't really care if the company survived. They were just looking to change it into some liquid cash real quick.
Yeah, just a quick buck, basically. And like I say, it was not just exclusive to Toys R Us. It happened to lots of places. So moving on from that, 2006 is when Toys R Us acquired FAO Schwarz, as Mark mentioned. I guess they were just trying to kind of acquire names, to strengthen their brand. Not a terrible idea, because I guess FAO Schwarz was, just like Toys R Us now, they were on their last leg too.
Well, they were. They were always a more high-end toy store, and when cost effectiveness was becoming more and more of a concern, people weren't willing to spend that much money for, the kind of luxury toys. But Toys R Us was able to then kind of give a section of their stores to the FAO Schwarz name and kind of spin it as a kind of a subline within Toys R Us. So, for example, the Muppet Whatnot Workshop, which had been done by FAO Schwarz the year previous, was now under Toys R Us, and you could basically build your own Muppets at Toys R Us.
Yeah, cool.
Didn't your favorite brother get you that for
my absolute favorite brother? I don't have it here where I can just pick it up and show you like I normally could, but if you look at my webpage,
I was gonna say it's featured on your banner or whatever. Your favorite brother, your only brother,
the one that you didn't tell anything about.
So sore, so salty. Whew. But yeah, and you're right. I remember that too, because they had a familiar toy line that they had been selling for years and years and years. They kept the FAO branding, but they just sort of put it in their own little corner, and that's where it lived. So you were still kind of buying the FAO Schwarz toys just inside of Toys R Us.
Right.
2009, they started popping up in malls in the abandoned KayBee toy store places, like as an express.
So it's essentially that model. It was the Toys R Us Express.
Yeah.
So they would take whatever small spaces they could find, which often were the same kinds of spaces that KayBee used to inhabit.
Yeah.
And they'd show up for, basically the months from October to Christmas time, hoping to grab parents looking to grab some toys for their kids.
Sure. And it would, I remember these stores, and you'd see them in outlet malls even to the last day. They were never all their best toys. It was just kind of the hits, the classics.
I
Hot Wheels and
smaller kind of a deal.
I remember at our mall when that appeared, like in the holiday season, that it took the place of like where Walden Books was, because now we're in that time where like all the bookstores are closing.
Yeah,
too.
Bookstores are there's still a few of them out there.
That's where Walden Books was, and there's like this Toys R Us Express, and I remember even kind of thinking like, the heck is that?
Yeah,
But I'll tell you, I don't know why or how it worked, and maybe it even didn't in your area. But for me, Toys R Us Express at one of our local outlet malls was the only place I ever found the Transformers War for Cybertron Ruination combiner.
Oh, yeah.
All of the components for that I only ever found at that Express store. I didn't find them at any other regular toy store.
I wonder how that happened.
So it was good to have.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because if they did have a Transformer toy, it was like something from the movies, the Michael Bay movies. Nothing cool that I would ever want to get. It seems like.
Was that even around then?
Well, I guess I'm thinking more like the outlet mall versions of that.
Right.
See.
Yeah.
To me, they're kind of just the same thing.
Normally, that's what outlet malls do: is they go for the things that have already not proven as popular at the regular stores, and they get them at a discount price.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case for these combiner toys that I ultimately found. I don't know why it worked out that way, but it was ultimately the only place I found them.
Could have been a mistake. On that same year, I have a note here where Toys R Us actually they bought up another famous toy line or brand name, KayBee Toys. They actually purchased KayBee Toys for just $2 million. I can't really don't really know what they did with that name necessarily.
They didn't do anything with it, in fact, which is
Yeah.
part of how that trademark, the name KayBee Toys,
Yeah.
ultimately was able to be purchased up by, I don't even need to get into the name of the folks, but that's
Yeah.
why KayBee is potentially coming back this fall,
Yep.
is because it was able to be purchased out separately because Toys R Us had essentially abandoned it.
Yeah. And they probably got it dirt cheap too. Probably cheaper from what they paid for it.
I don't know what they paid, but it almost had to be dirt cheap because Strategic Marks actually is the name of the company that does this. They have a number of other defunct trademarks, usually for no longer operating department stores.
Mm-hmm.
To the best of my knowledge, while they sell T-shirts with those logos on them, they have never turned one of those trademarks around into an operating store to date.
Interesting.
KayBee would be the first.
It reminds me of these companies that specialize in swooping up and getting popular domain names and then turning it and selling it for a little bit of profit for them.
It's a similar concept.
Yeah.
And, to the extent that there is nostalgia behind those names,
Mm-hmm.
it actually makes sense.
Yeah,
But
it
it's a
does.
risky endeavor.
Yeah. Okay, so 2010, I have a note here that says that Toys R Us actually reported $1 billion in online sales, so that seems pretty impressive. They did get it, they were late to the game, but they did get it turned around enough to sell $1 billion on their website.
If they didn't have the kind of debt that they had, it would have been great.
Yeah. But in 2012, that is the last year that Toys R Us reported a profit. It was losing money every year after that. And then really, I just kind of go all the way up to 2017 is when they filed for Chapter 11, which is, as you know, it's last gasp. You just try to reorganize, do everything you can. You're just, as a consumer, when you hear Chapter 11, it's bad news. So
It isn't always fatal. But
no,
it's definitely been.
it's not always fatal. Sometimes you can come back from it. 2017, that's when they went ahead and closed the Times Square location. Probably very, very expensive. No need to keep it open. Lots of I said before how much square feet it was, and that's in Times Square, so they could no longer afford to keep that open. And then, of course, 2018 is when they announced that initial, 182 stores they were going to close. And I'll never forget getting the tweets were making the rounds and on Facebook. Here's the list. Check the list to see if your Toys R Us is closed. And just as you said, I'm like nervously looking at that list. And, there was the one store in St. Matthews or whatever that was on the list. I kept looking it over. Oh, our store's not on it. Yes. They're at least alive for a little bit longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and I got a note here. March 20th. That's when it...
Oh, well, it was before my birthday.
Okay. March 20th is when all the reports of all stores closing became a story. And that would have been the morning that I went up to the store and took pictures and video and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, and we discussed it at the top of the show, when that happened around March, there was all kinds of stories circulating. There was hope that, it would survive in the States in some way, somehow. But time would pass, and there would be no stories. There would just be bad news. Like, oh well, they're going to court, and then it never materialized, unfortunately. Here's just some factoids about Toys R Us. They did some good. They were huge with Toys for Tots organization. From 2014 on, I have a note here that says they reported $55 million for them, and they also donated over $4 million in just toys. So it wasn't just money; they also donated toys.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. And I remember reading stuff like this too towards the end, where 40% of the store's overall sales were all generated in that fourth quarter, just prior to Christmas. And that makes sense. And that's when we would, as a family, usually go. If it was coming close to Christmas time, we'd take the big trip to Toys R Us with Logan, and that's when we'd look at everything. And it's sad because they'll never get to do that again. Mm-hmm. Go through each aisle. What here looks, because you get the little the catalogs, and those are nice too. And by the way, Amazon's going to be sending out catalogs to kind of fill that void too. I read, which is kind of nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they're going to send out toy books to, I guess there's maybe they're Prime members. Who knows? But they're going to fill that void. But you get the catalogs and those are cool and nice, but just there's no replacing walking through the store and looking at everything. It's just there isn't. Yeah, you get convenience and sometimes better prices if you shop online, but you'll never get that tactile kind of feel around, look at it. Let's see. And in factoid, I'd mentioned that Geoffrey had a family, but the family's name was, let's see, what was his wife? Was it Gigi? Was that his wife? His son was Junior.
I'm not as familiar on the other drafts.
I have no idea.
Well, I wrote down Gigi, so that might have been his wife, but his son was Junior, and he had a daughter, Baby G.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all the factoids I have really for Toys R Us. It's over. There's no more really. That I don't think there's anything else. The only thing that's left is who's going to own the IP.
It seems so surreal.
Yeah.
Next month.
I've had some time to marinate over this. I was really shocked and in denial for the longest time. I didn't want to believe it, which is part of the reason why I kind of kept away from the store for the longest time. And but I've had time to process it, and now that it's actually done and over and the stores are closed, I'm more at peace with it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I'm still gonna see all of the things that interest me in other places like Target and Walmart.
I mean,
they're ramping up their toy departments.
Honestly, I rarely went anyway. I mean, there's all the nostalgia when you were a kid, but I had no real reason to ever go in my adult life all that terribly often.
Yeah. Rare occasions you were feeling nostalgic, you'd walk in.
Yeah, I thought every now and then it'd be like, I haven't been to Toys R Us in forever, and so you'd kind of go and just walk around.
But for me,
for me, this was a regular part of my weekend activity. I was around Southern California.
God bless you, Mark. Forever young.
Different stores in my area, so I could go to 3 or 4 different Toys R Us's in a weekend, and I do that. But ultimately, I have to figure out something else to do with my weekends now.
Yeah.
But I would plan a little couple afternoon sessions where I would take Logan up where they would have, special building sessions where they would just give you like little Lego sets. You could go up there.
Yeah, I've seen those.
And you just spend time with your kid, and there's other little kids there, and they're talking with each other, and they would do neat little things like scavenger hunts. Before they would just give you the Lego set, they'd kind of give you a little sheet, and you'd go around and there would be a little clue, and you'd have to write the answer to whatever toy department that you found yourself in. You'd write the answer to whatever it is they were trying to get you to say. The little Geoffrey doll, Allison, for birthdays, they would send out little, vouchers to come get a free toy.
Cool.
So this little Geoffrey, she got for free. So that, they were doing things. I would read a lot of comments from parents who are clearly nostalgia is not as big a thing for them. They would just look at Toys R Us as this big hassle, man. Like, I just hate going to Toys R Us because of the kids and the busy, and they would typically go only around Christmas time, so that's what they've associated Toys R Us is just this stressful thing, and the prices weren't discounted. They were just MSRP.
Right.
It's not like they raised prices. It's just other stores could afford to offer lower prices, hoping that you would, they're taking a loss on those sales.
One of the problems that Toys R Us had was that they really wouldn't ever clearance their prices. So you'd have product on the shelves that other stores had already gotten rid of. They not only were charging less than MSRP, but after they'd been there for a while, they'd clearance them out. So other stores had already gotten rid of this stuff. Toys R Us is left with now older product that they're still charging full MSRP for, and it's just lingering for far too long.
Yeah, and you're just not accustomed to that as a consumer. It's just sort of not acceptable, really.
But and I mean, I guess honestly, that's why I would never go to Toys R Us, is because I knew I could get whatever for like $2 more cheaper, or whatever it was.
And plus, you might need to pick up a loaf of bread. It's just the convenience of these places.
Myers and Target and whatever. You get, like,
I mean,
everything.
we're all guilty of, and I don't want to say guilty because it's just capitalism, right? Toys R Us put a whole lot of people out of business. So it's just the way it works. But there was a lot of people that would say, well, Toys R Us, they don't do anything special. They just don't do anything. And it would irritate me because you're just clearly not I don't know. I don't understand because they're sending me stuff in the mail. I'm having these neat little experiences with my little kids. I don't understand why you're not having that experience, but and it's more convenient. It's cheaper to shop at Amazon, but it's not like going to Toys R Us still wasn't a big deal to a kid.
Oh, one thing we kind of skipped over. I remember like back in the day, it'd be like game shows or whatever, and you'd have that shopping spree.
Thank you very much for reminding me. Yeah. That was a big deal. Who sponsored that? It was Nickelodeon, I guess, that would do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Nickelodeon was so much in the 80s.
I feel like they did it like once or twice a year, and they would have some sort of contest. I don't know. The rules to me were never. They probably explained it in small text whenever they would run those
different
promos.
For each group that did this kind of thing. But basically, you put your name in a drawing, and if you get selected, then you get to run through the store for an hour and grab everything you want.
Man.
Oh, it wasn't an hour. It was like 10 minutes tops.
Oh, yeah.
My apologies. I'm not intending to exaggerate, but I totally did.
Yeah.
So Mark Martelli of Reading, Pennsylvania won the grand prize, a 5-minute toy run.
You got 2 minutes. You do it, please.
Jessica Williams of Edmonds, Washington won first prize, a 3-minute run. The winners went wild. 108 video games, 1 house, 5 bikes, 8 board games, 7 dolls, 1 myth, 3 beanbags, 6 action figures, 8 stuffed animals, 5 models, 1 human skull, 2 sleds, 9 radio controls. Over $9,100 worth of toys. So much stuff that the store manager almost fainted, and the winner did. Nickelodeon Super Toy Run.
They wish they got an hour. You could just calmly walk to the store.
Yeah, because that was like the big thing. It's like every kid is like planning it out, like in their mind.
Yeah,
like
10 minutes might have been more than they had. I mean, it could have been.
I'm thinking like 3 minutes.
Yeah, it was super fast.
Yeah, no more than 3. That's already extreme, I think.
Yeah, the idea is you just kind of have to plan out. Like every kid did it, like you would plan in your head, like where would I go?
We were talking about the whole layout before.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what you're doing. Like in your head, you're like, I'm going straight here, and I'm just like,
and I'm just gonna arm bar. I'm gonna stick an arm out and just push everything in the cart. But was there any thing where did you have to cross a finish line, and if you didn't make it back, you didn't get the toys?
I think it kind of depends on.
I honestly don't know. I don't know anybody that ever won one of these things.
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on the one that's being done. Like
that would be so heartbreaking if they were to do that.
Whatever, like when the timer stops, it's just like what you got is what you got. Or if maybe there was one.
I seem to remember there being a finish line.
You have to cross that line or else nothing. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know either. If you guys out there remember, for sure, put it in the comments. Let us know if you vividly remember it. And yes, there was a finish line. But yeah, I don't remember ever reading any stories about people not getting to keep their prizes.
All I remember is like hearing that such a thing would happen and just imagining that if that was you, but never really actually seeing it go down.
It would get televised on, I'm pretty sure, Nickelodeon or whoever was putting it together, but I don't think I ever saw it.
Yeah.
I've seen some video clips
where
they obviously aired it somewhere.
I'm quite sure it did, but I'm like you. I just don't remember seeing that part.
But and I want to say, too, is they found a kid years later who participated in it, and they wanted to just kind of catch up with him and, like, is this real? Did you keep it? And he was just like, oh, no, it was all real, and what you saw is what I got. And, he had all kinds of wonderful memories of it from it still, I imagine. But, that was a very distinct Toys R Us thing. I guess KayBee Toys had a version of it, too.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't necessarily know if Toys R Us were the only. But, I mean, it had to be one or the other. But, yeah, for sure, Toys R Us is the one that sticks out in my brain. Good job, Nick.
We were talking about that video game aisle. I remember, and I don't remember how long this was, if it was like 1 year or if it was there for a couple of years or whatever. But just one specific point in time when it was the NES era, it was Nintendo Entertainment System, that right before that aisle, like if you just kind of did a 360 and turned around, that it was like an end cap, and they had like this like arcade cabinet that was just like a gutted arcade cabinet, totally empty. You had to provide like your own TV, but you would put like a TV like on the shelf, and the NES would go like under where the control panel would be kind of hollowed out, and because I remember there was like a hole that so you could like push the power button of the NES. Yeah. But somehow it had like wired controllers that you could just like plug them into the 1 and 2 slot of the NES, because it had like the actual joystick and 2 buttons that would play the NES.
So those were there.
So those were built in, and you just kind of plugged them in, I guess.
I was trying to imagine if there was just a place that you could fit an NES Advantage or something into to give you that arcade stick kind of.
Oh no, it was all built in. You didn't even need that.
Yeah.
But so you could basically just play like a Nintendo like in an arcade cabinet, and I don't remember how much it was. I want to say like $100.
$100 seems right because I've seen it too.
But being like a little kid, it was just like way more than I could ever. Mom would like never go for it, kind of.
Well, too, with inflation, it'd be like closer to $200 nowadays, and it might as well have been $1,000.
I wanted that thing so bad though. That was like the most amazing thing.
And like when you're a kid and you have in you 1 or 2 big gifts you can petition for every year.
Yeah,
that seems so frivolous that a parent would just immediately strike that down.
And
no.
My big gift that I always tried to go for was like the firehouse. We talked about the Ghostbusters firehouse.
Sure.
And
it's been discussed.
I remember that was like my big gift that I would go for. And I did finally get it one Christmas. Mark
has a pretty good story that we've talked about, but maybe we ought to give him an opportunity to talk about his big, Metroplex. Now look how small he is now. He felt so huge back in the day.
Came out more recently.
That wasn't even a gift though. I'll let him tell the story, but he bought that.
I bought that with my own money.
Right.
He paid for it. I was eyeing it, and I don't remember what it was that I was trying to decide between, because I know that you, Nick, were there kind of encouraging me to go ahead and pull the trigger and buy this thing.
Yeah, because I just remember...
I wanted this.
I just remember it was in your mind, like, you're considering getting Metroplex.
And you just kept in his ear.
I'm just like, get it.
What are you, crazy? Yes.
But I definitely did want it, and I did ultimately buy it. And this was during a season, I must have been in, my 6th grade, give or take. And Nick would be a few years younger. And so we lived close enough to that Toys R Us that we could ride our bikes down there.
That's cool.
Yeah. And we had ridden our bikes down there on this particular day when I bought Metroplex. And so now had to get Metroplex home while riding on our bicycles.
Well, and that was part of my like ploy to get you to get it. I'm like, if you buy it, I'll help carry it home.
And so
no easy task.
Between the bag it came in, we probably hung it over the handlebar trying to get it
It
going.
was awful.
That was playing against the wheel a bit, and that didn't work. And at one point, I actually remember kind of being hunched over the handlebars with the
must protect
between my handlebars and myself.
Oh my god!
Ultimately, we got it home. It's all in one piece, and I still have it.
It was such a pain.
Oh my god! I can only imagine.
Like I hung it over the handlebars, and we took turns, I think, carrying it. But I remember at one point, like I hung it over the handlebars, and I'm pedaling, and the one knee, like I had it like on the left side, and my left knee kept going bump,
repeatedly bumping it with your knee.
Yeah.
Oh, long legs, no. I cherish that memory, and I wasn't even there. That's kind of a legendary story that Nick's talked about.
I'm never selling that one.
Oh, no, you can't. That's just worth too much sentimentally. I don't know, like maybe Omega Supreme was my big get from Toys R Us.
Yeah.
I remember getting Omega Supreme and being so disappointed.
Really?
Yeah, he's not very fun to play with. Because he's all like hollowed shells, and the tracks are like his legs. And
yeah,
he's neat, but
but he walks.
He did walk. Trypticon walked a little better.
He shuffles.
Yeah, he kind of walked in a circle, kind of, sort of. But I don't know. I'm not really sure what my most prized Toys R Us gift might have been. I have memories of purchasing, I don't know why, DuckTales. I have this like vivid memory of purchasing DuckTales from Toys R Us.
Yeah.
And being very excited. I think maybe my mom...
You bug them as much as when Rescue Rangers was coming
No. Yeah, for those people who don't know, I was famously or infamously known for calling Babbage's
like every day.
Daily. And, and I think we've talked about this in the past too. Like
Rescue Rangers in yet?
Nick and maybe you too, Mark, would just kind of be like, I'm not going to call. and bother them. But that wasn't my problem. I was going to make sure they had it.
Call Toys R Us on occasion looking for stuff, but for the most part, I hate making phone calls, so I probably never did that very much.
Yeah. But yeah, but I remember I think my mom had maybe dropped me off and had to run to another store. So I had purchased it, and I was sitting in that the hallway that you walk in, and I'd already started opening up the package and was flipping through the manual and looking at the pictures in the manual. So that's a good memory for me.
That's cool.
But just that, seeing those trains that I'd mentioned before they were fully assembled. I don't know if I mentioned that before. Those tracks and train tracks, the slot car tracks, they were all fully assembled and hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very memorable and just a distinct 80s, at least, Toys R Us thing. I can't pinpoint at one point they stopped doing it. But they did.
Yeah,
I probably when they stopped being very popular.
I remember that aisle that and they would have the things like hanging through the middle, of the aisle right there.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about Toys R Us. Good memories. I'm sad to see it go, but I've kind of made my peace with it now. I'm okay. I'm okay.
You mentioned like you went the one time and you intended for that to be your last time, but then you ended up going a couple more times.
Yeah.
What was it like the last time you went? Like, was the store starting to get really, really empty or?
Now I've seen pictures online where the stores were bone dry, where people would post things. Well, it wasn't quite like that.
The last time I went, half the store was already roped off. And
really?
Like, the back half was just gutted.
I think you went the last week it was open. Now, I think the last time I went was maybe 3 weeks before it was closed finally. So I and Laura, she's the reason. My wife Laura, she's the reason why we went those last couple times. We'd be in the area, and she's of course looking for good deals for Christmas presents in the future and things. It makes sense to go. And she'd be like, "You want to go?" And I'd say yes, but that first time that she'd mentioned it, I was like, I really don't want to go. But I'd go in there, and I went in there and went back again because I mentioned they were selling games at 50% off, and they still had some pretty popular titles.
Okay.
So but it was pretty bare. It was sad. The toys section was non-existent pretty much,
right?
But nothing was roped off.
Yeah.
Mark, do you how many trips did you go there in those last periods of time? Did you take advantage?
Like I said, we had several in the area, and I definitely did go most weekends between when they announced it was going to close off and before it actually did. So I saw several in that state of all roped off, very little things in them.
Yeah.
There were a couple of purchases that I made in the post-bankruptcy period, but not that much. Most of the stuff that I was interested in got sold off real quickly at near full price in the first place.
Yeah.
The one thing that I got, and this was from that first round of closures before the full bankruptcy was, before the full closure was announced, I did get the Cybertron. It's this large Primus transforming planet figure that actually had been released.
Not Unicron, though?
Ago.
It's that.
The mold was released 10 years ago as Primus.
Okay.
It was released again this past summer as part of the latest movie line, just called Cybertron there, in blue and bright orange colors. That we called it G2 Primus, because it was kind of like as if they'd done a G2 of that particular planet former. I got that at basically half off, which still put it about $70.
Oh wow!
It was way too expensive to even consider getting.
Oh, it was a great time to pick up a big wheel. They were even from the beginning. Even if you just got 20% off a big wheel, you're saving a good chunk of change.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't quite the last purchase I made at Toys R Us. I think the last purchase I made might have been the little Burger Time. It's kind of a mini arcade cabinet.
Yeah, I got one of those too from there.
Yeah, that might be the last thing I actually bought at Toys R Us. I'm not quite sure.
That's when the sales were going on. That's really about the only thing I ever bought. I got like that little arcade Burger Time thing, and they're also like these little. They weren't like Lego brand, but it was like little Legos that
I did get a few of
were
those.
like little arcade cabinets, and I got like about 4 of those. And
I
that's
picked up
about
some
all I got.
pops.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a lot of pops, and they were trying to get rid of them. They were pretty decently priced, so I got a few of those.
I went like 3 times total, like after it was announced, which is really about 2 times more than I thought I would.
Yeah. All right, so that chapter is pretty much over with. What I'd like to do is move on to some other stores that we're kind of also paying tribute to. Obviously, the big star is Toys R Us, but this has happened before. There have been some really memorable childhood stops for us that also saw the same deal.
Yeah.
Maybe not with as much fanfare as Toys R Us, and I don't know if it's just Toys R Us was just the king of toy stores or it just was the last great whale. But KayBee Toys, which was in business for a very, very, very long time, from 1922 to 2009. That was the
for season 2.
Yeah, and you worked there for a little while. Very notable for just being like the mall toy store.
Right.
Yeah.
My note is just not Toys R Us. I was happy to have it, but that I never really. I did feel like their prices were more expensive because of the mall, I guess.
I remember at one point they kind of went through like a branding change, and I don't remember which was like the old way, which was the new way. But there was
Christmas season I worked there. This would be 1996. They had at that point started changing their name from KayBee, KayBee Toys, that I'd always known them as, to just the letters KayBee Toys.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot about that. But it was a place to go. Sometimes you could find good prices on toys. Like, yeah, they were expensive, but they kind of famously had that deal with, I think, some Marvel figures where they just bought a huge lot of Marvel figures. And at one point, we're doing them like 3 for $10 or something for a long time until they got rid of them all.
Well, one thing I remember about KayBee, and Mark, I think, knows some more details about this, because there was that time period where they were reissuing Transformers Generation 1 toys. It was like the commemorative series.
Ah, yes, yes.
And usually those were at Toys R Us, I think. And
they were.
But anyway, there were some that were kind of warming the shelves at KayBee that they just weren't selling. And Sideswipe was one of them. I remember that I picked that up at KayBee, discounted, like heavily discounted.
I think you got me a
like
Sideswipe
of them
for like my birthday or something.
Yeah, maybe
that's when you got
know.
that.
But yeah,
basically,
yeah, I might have got 2 because I've got one for myself also. But yeah, I got that little commemorative series Sideswipe at KayBee.
Cool. I remember Martin telling the story where he got a Virtual Boy for nothing.
Yeah, was that at KayBee?
I think so. Yeah. I want to say he got it for like $50 or something,
nice.
Or maybe even less. They would do those types of things. And it, KayBee is very distinctive. You got that a section of the store that was the entrance, or they had the little noisy toys.
Oh yeah,
it was squeak and bark and
yeah, the little yip 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 yip. They had like the little ferret or whatever, like on the wheel kind of.
Remember the little trains that would kind of go around, and then it would like change its track. Like if it got to a point, the weight of the train would flip.
Mark knows what we're talking about there.
You know those, Mark?
Oh yeah.
Sounds like the turnover choo-choo.
Mickey Mouse.
Turn over choo-choo.
Mickey Mouse.
Turn over choo-choo. Turn over choo-choo. Turn over choo-choo.
Mickey Mouse Turnover Choo-Choo. Batteries not included. Mickey turns over and goes past the Donald Duck crossing gate to Goofy on the station.
Turn over choo-choo. Turn over choo-choo.
Mickey Mouse.
Turn over choo-choo.
Mickey Mouse Turnover Choo-Choo. Assembly required. From Ilco.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
That was a staple of KayBee toys.
Oh man, we had what was ours, like Disney branded or something?
Ours was a Mickey Mouse branded one, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I love that thing.
Oh, it was great.
There were like so many of those. We talked about before where you would just slap a logo on a toy. I mean, there were so many.
I saw that mold used at one of those little mall kiosks where they sell the cheap knockoff type toys as recently as 5 years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, same mold.
I mean, the classics are hard to kill, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, because it would have a thing like it would make a little circle around there, and then it'd come, and then it would do that little flip the
the weight of the train would kind of flip it forward, and it would just continue on the track.
Yeah,
it was really cute.
Yeah.
I like that.
Look up turnover choo-choo.
Okay.
You'll
Yeah,
find it.
we'll get some pictures of that.
Yeah,
thing.
well, definitely have to get some pictures, and I'm sure for a lot of people listening, they're just like, "Holy crap, I forgot all about this."
But yeah, I mean, you could hear KayBee like walking the mall, and you knew when you're getting close because of all the little electronic like little puppy that would like wiggle his nose or whatever and flip, or
the ferret, the ball, or the ferret and the ball, like that classic guy.
Oh, saw those little stuffed dogs and ferrets forever.
They were everywhere. And I always imagined how torturous it must have been to have to hear that around the clock.
Yeah.
And they're battery operated, I guess. So
Yep.
The batteries would die, and you'd be in charge of going over there and replacing the battery. Like, I don't want to do this, man. I guess I got to put a fresh battery in this thing.
Pretty much.
So KayBee Toys. That I don't really have a whole lot to say about KayBee Toys.
And there was more of that local toy store for us, Thornberry's. Remember Thornberry?
Thornberry's, yes.
Yeah, Thornberry's was a local establishment. They started in the 50s, and they continued on into the late 80s. And there was great debate over this for long, and we finally nailed it down thanks to me finding some like old pictures from the same angle. I was on a mission. We know for sure exactly that it was in that place of that Lens Crafters, but it was a pretty big
where
store.
I would have called it.
Before I found the photographic evidence, that was about where I was placing it.
Yeah.
But I felt so vindicated. I was just like in My Cousin Vinny, where I found the picture with the pause attraction. I was ready to take that to the stand. You see, Your Honor, this photo taken in 1982. But yeah, Thornberry's was great. What
stands out in my mind the most about a Thornberry's is the Brio set.
Yes.
That, when you'd walk in the store, you could just sit there and play with the little Brios.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
Those were a staple for sure, and you could just sit and play with it it was free entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing for the first time the Autobot cassettes, not the Rhino, I think.
Okay.
Oh, really?
At a Thornberry's, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so this would have been towards the end of its run. But
yeah, because I was kind of thinking like they would have been already gone by the time those Transformers.
Not quite yet, but close.
They were, like Mark said, they were on their last leg, but I remember seeing those.
My main memories of Thornberry's is just way back in the day. Like I kind of remember those Super Friend toys. I think it was Super Friends. That
Superpowers team?
Maybe a Superpowers team, because there was like the Lex Luthor that was in like the green suit, and
that's the Superpowers collection.
Yeah, I remember those, and the Brio is really like all I even remember.
Yeah, that for sure. Well, they had the monkey, I guess, for the mascot. What was his name?
Thorny.
Thorny, yeah. Thorny the monkey was a great mascot.
Yeah, I like that monkey.
And I think I might have mentioned this to you guys before at another point, but I love looking up old pictures of this man whose family owned the store. And he is, from a time in like the 50s, 60s where like the men all kind of dressed in the suits and would wear like, the greasy stuff in their hair and comb it a certain way.
Yeah.
He always reminded me of like Walt Disney
when
they would show pictures of him at openings. And there was that store that was not in a mall with the bike, the monkey on the bike or whatever pedaling.
Yeah.
They had a relationship with Schwinn.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Schwinn had a relationship with Thornberry.
So that's the whole story behind that thing. Yeah, apparently there's somebody who still has that in their attic. It's still intact.
I was going to say, because they're local.
Yeah.
And I know that there was a time, it was a few years back, not super long ago, that I was driving around through like, I want to say the St. Matthews area, and I saw like a Thornberry's monkey. It was like something that would have come like straight off at like the side of the building that was like in front of like somebody's house. And I was like, that's the Thornberry's monkey.
Yeah.
It
might be that house.
He had like the sweater with the T on his shirt and everything. I knew like what it was. And I got like
I'll
so
never
excited.
forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so excited. And but yeah, I mean I haven't seen it since. I guess I don't know if they just have taken it down.
I wonder if they pull it out for
area.
Christmas time or something and just decorate it.
I don't know, but yeah.
From a story that I read, I mean it still works. You can fire him up and he'll ride his little bike.
But this one didn't have the bike, though.
Oh, it didn't have the bike.
This wasn't that one. I know that picture you're talking about, but this was kind of like more of like what was on like the side of like in like Bashford Manor or something, you know?
Okay.
Because there was like they would have Thornberry's like written down the side.
Okay.
Because you know it didn't really have like a big wall because it's in the mall. You know? So it was just like that little skinny, little narrow bit, and there was like the monkey like right there.
Okay. And I've read some like stories of apparently you could walk in there maybe with a report card or something and get a free toy, and they had a little treasure chest you could reach into and get a free toy.
Oh yeah.
Just like little personal touches you would expect from a.
That's cool.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, there's that one, and the only other one that I have here to mention really of note is Children's Palace.
Oh man, Children's Palace was amazing.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was to me it was the only thing that came close to Toys R Us.
Since that one for us, or I can't really speak for Mark, but for me at least, that since it was further away for us, you know, we didn't have one like.
It was in St. Matthews.
Yeah, it was in St. Matthews, and it was a good little trip for us, you know, so we didn't get there very often. So if we did get a chance to go to Children's Palace, which was maybe like once a year, like, you know, like during the summertime when school's out or something, that was, you know, something special.
Well, remember the outside was made up to look like a castle.
Yeah, I mean, and it looked amazing. I mean, you'd see it like from the freeway, you know, every time we drive by, you just like, you know, you'd look at it like as long as you could,
as long as your neck could crane,
as long as it was in view, you just would look for it, you know.
And that's a Best Buy now, and for the longest time, they still had those, you know, like what do you call them, like towers or whatever, just kind of on the side of the building, just teasing you and taunting you, reminding you of better days. But yeah, Children's Palace is weird too because it at one point merged with another toy store called Child World.
Yes.
And they each used Peter Panda as their mascot, I guess.
I would have totally forgotten, but I remember that panda now.
Yeah, and he was on roller skates and would just kind of dance and roller skate around the store. And, you know, as I've mentioned to you in the past, that's where I got my Optimus Prime from, was Children's Palace.
Yeah.
And
I didn't get them, but it was the first place I saw the Seacons.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
I remember it was Christmas, and there was a bad winter storm that had just passed through, and us sludging through sleet and snow for me to get this thing. Says I don't remember the specifics. Maybe my mom called ahead of time and made sure, but they had Megatron and Optimus Prime, and I got them there.
Cool. Both at the same time.
No, I didn't get them both.
I was like,
just Optimus Prime. No, we weren't rich. We weren't Rockefellers or anything. They were kind of pricey, man.
Yeah.
They were probably the equivalent of $50 nowadays. We didn't have a whole lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
But, you know, gotta love my mom. She did it. I have one little interesting factoid from the 86 Tom Cruise movie, The Color of Money, the Paul Newman movie where he's like a pool hustler or whatever. There's a scene where Paul Newman's trying to convince Vince and his characters in the movies, Vince, to let him be his mentor, and he's got a gift, and you know, you can hustle for lots of money. And he did this while Vince was working in a toy store, and it wasn't branded Children's Palace or anything, but that was in fact a Children's Palace. You know, it wasn't some set with toys built in. They went to a Children's Palace and filmed that scene. So
that's cool.
If you ever happen to catch that movie and you see Vince is stocking the toys, that's a Children's Palace. And that's really all I have. I remember the layout being kind of, I'm trying to remember. I feel like it was the walls and aisles were much shorter, I feel like, than Toys R Us.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just like blending in memories of Toys R Us with Children's Palace because I didn't get there very often. Yeah, I don't know.
I remember almost nothing about it other than the exterior.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely the exterior.
But it was a brilliant decision to dress it that way and present it as a castle because it was very memorable.
Yeah.
And that was you know, years are iffy, but I want to say Child World was in 1970 when they kind of started off, and then there were Children's Palaces here and there, and then I want to say Child World was actually financially doing better, but I guess they thought maybe Children's Palace was a better brand, maybe. So that they kind of took on the Children's Palace name, even though I think the Child World stores were doing better. And I want to say that those were like more of a northeastern thing, the Child World. But if you Google and do searches on YouTube for Children's Palace, you may just happen to find a Child World TV commercial. And, you know, it's very familiar to a Children's Palace, but it's like Child World, and it's like the themes are the same. It's just a different name. But, yeah, Children's Palace was pretty cool. And that kind of brings us to the end of our just remembering the
nostalgia trip.
Yeah, it's the end of our nostalgia trip. I wanted to do this episode for Toys R Us.
Yeah. And
I want to thank you guys for doing it again with me.
You're welcome.
The third time. I was very, very, very upset when, even the first time when we lost the episode. And then, you know, you guys agreed to do it again, like the next day, fresh off of that. And we it was like a dress rehearsal. We just did it again. And it was a great episode. I was very happy with it. And later that day, I was just like, oh my God. I remember Nick sending me like pictures of puppies and stuff. I was ready to jump off a bridge. I couldn't believe it. But that was the moment that I went and bought new equipment and like started putting in all these fail safes and redundancies so that hopefully that'll never happen again. And it hasn't since then. But yeah, so doing it again with the third time. And I really enjoyed the way this episode, you know, the flow of it. I'm happy with it. I'm glad that we were able to do it a third time. And we gave a lot of space. We gave it some time to, you know, we're not going to do this again right away. And we were able to do it after the end of the store closing. And we also have that information that we didn't have then. So this feels like more of a complete tribute. Like we got the beginnings and the end. We know how it ends. Yeah. And other than who gets to, you know, keep the name and everything.
Sure.
But for all intents and purposes, as far as we're all concerned, it's over. Yeah. You know, unless we move to Canada or something. Or Japan. But anyways.
All the time.
We are a video podcast as well as an audio podcast. If you are listening to us on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, you know, means that you listen to the show, just know that we have a video channel, a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/BitGeek. And you can also see us there. And I try to put little extra editing in the videos and try to make it worthwhile, like stand out a little bit. And I have fun with it.
And that's really the place to leave comments. If you want to leave comments, let's just do it on the YouTube page.
For sure.
Oh, and please leave comments.
Yeah, leave comments. I love getting comments. Yeah. Just, you know, it tickles me when people listen to the show and interact with us. You can, you know, interact with us on Twitter. I'm on @RonAvis.
And Nicholas J. Wright, I think, is my full handle on Twitter.
And Mark, what is your Twitter handle again?
My Twitter handle is, you actually can just look for my name, but it would be GB Blackrock. Yeah. If you do search for GB Blackrock or Mark Baker-Wright, you'll find me either way. Right. If you want to find me on Facebook, you're actually better off to go to Blackrock's Toybox, which is the Facebook page that's dedicated to my blog.
So you will write your stories on your blog, but then you'll go to Facebook and promote the stories, basically, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
if I do post a few things on the Facebook page that don't necessarily make it to the blog, like if I'm sharing a news story from some other site or I found a picture that looks cool, that stuff goes on Facebook, but won't be a blog entry.
Yeah, everybody out there who gets to this point, and I plugged it before, please check out Mark's blog. It's really good. Let's see, what else? We have our own Facebook page. It's The BitGeeks, if you find us there. And I'm trying to be good about staying on top of updates for whether or not a new show will be dropping on Thursdays, because we try to get when we do have a show, it's released always on Thursdays. So you can look for us every Thursday, hopefully. But if not, I'll try to get on a couple of days before and say, hey, we're not going to have an episode out this week because life happened, or we're on vacation, or somebody got sick. So, you know, you can check us out there. And that's really it. Oh, one other thing.
And that's the Facebook page is often where I have like a lot of pictures and stuff.
Yeah. And we didn't want to like alienate our audio listeners because, you know, we would mention things and then I would put it in a video like to demonstrate, you know, just to illustrate our point. You have agreed to kind of take up the mantle of updating the Facebook page with all those little things. Yeah. So that.
I need to put those on Twitter too, but usually Facebook is where it's going to happen if it does.
Yeah, and we don't have a Twitter account necessarily. We just use our names.
Yeah, just our own accounts, right? So maybe that's why I do it that way.
Yeah, and one other last thing, and I'm sorry to bother you guys about this, but if you are listening to us on, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, if you wouldn't mind, just leave a little review, rate us. Algorithmically, it helps the site. It helps us to attract new listeners. I don't know exactly how it works per se, but all I know is that if you do have lots of reviews, they're more likely to recommend you, I guess, in their search algorithm. So,
but it also helps people to know that what is being offered by this podcast may connect with a person's special interests. Because there's tons and tons of podcasts out there over all sorts of different subjects.
Right.
This one has a particular niche. This is for fans of various kinds of pop culture, video games, toys, etc. And so people who are looking for podcasts related to pop culture, video games, toys, etc., can know that this is a podcast that will meet their needs because of the comments that have been left.
Good point, Mark. And since Nick and I have been friends for like over 30 years now, we can kind of share and connect. We can remember when, like, maybe we remembered something as friends, but then also individually that we can talk about, and we learn things about each other that we didn't even know. But we've been close for all these years, so it's not just a person talking about nostalgic things. It's like two friends remembering how things were, together, and it helps to remember things like the little train or the lightsaber toy that you had mentioned that I didn't know about. So that's if there's anything to be taken from these types of shows for whose chosen niche is nostalgia, that kind of thing. I treasure that stuff because when you remember something and you recall something that's long forgotten, it feels great for me personally.
Yeah, when you're just like, oh, I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
So I think we have a leg up on a lot of these other shows. We kind of have that familiarity with one another and that the closeness of being friends for so long. And I also like that we can get guests like Mark on because he's obviously family. So, and he has just such a wealth of knowledge in many things, but it's perfect for us because he has this particular niche in Transformers and game shows and board games, and whenever we have an episode, he's great to call on. So thanks for joining us, Mark.
Yeah, thanks.
You're very welcome.
It's awesome to have you on as a guest. I've been your host, Ron Avis,
and I'm Nick Wright,
and I'm Mark Baker-Wright.
And see you later.
See ya.